We all face challenges in our lives and grow from overcoming them. But some individuals seek out the most pressing issues to our societal development and aim to challenge the underlying systems. In this series, we speak to some of these challenges to understand the motivation behind these ambitious missions, get insights from the grueling processes and prospects for the future they're aiming to help create. Created in collaboration with Dockers, providing smarter, more comfortable, and more versatile clothing for every occasion, they believe that progress is woven into everything we do, from how we make our clothing to how we care for the people and the planet. And so do we. Enjoy this series.
Yeah, so my name is Jon Rose. I'm the founder of an international aid organization called Waves for Water. We're a US-based organization, but we work globally. We have programs in over 40 countries. And I personally live in a place called Truckee, which is right by Lake Tahoe in California. And before I started my organization, I was a professional surfer on the tour for many years. And so, yeah, that's just a little snapshot of my journey.
Yeah, and it's a really action-packed and interesting journey. Could you tell us a little bit about how you got started with the mission you're on today?
Yeah, it was really a twist of fate. I grew up in a small sort of beach town in Southern California and just started surfing because that's just what you just do the beach sports, right? More so than regular sports. And you have this amazing resource at your fingertips, the ocean. So I fell in love with that. And I was so focused and so dedicated in that and just wanting that to be my path, my career, my whole life. And I achieved it. And it became this, my first sort of and only career as an adult. That I turned pro out of high school around 17 and went on for about a 13-year career. And any athlete, especially professional athlete, that where their passion for their sport becomes their job, they hit a day, and when the sobering reality comes that they've passed that peak. You're going up and up and up, and then there is a peak at some point, and then you're going down the other side. It doesn't mean you've fallen off completely or whatever, but you can just tell. I mean, the gravity is what it is. And that was fine. I felt good about the career that I had, but I had never thought about what I was going to do otherwise. I'd never ever thought about another career. I just put all my effort and emphasis on surfing. And as the contracts started getting less and less, and in some cases disappearing, and just all the kids that are coming up are way better than you, and you just hit this very sobering point where you go, whoa, I didn't plan that well. I didn't, what do I do? Oh, yeah. Now it was definitely a low point, but I was, I guess you could say just a little lost more than anything, still wrapped in this identity of Jon Rose, the pro surfer. Who am I without that? All these questions. At the same time, just about 30 years old. So a lot of life ahead of me. And I had the idea for this organization, not a global organization, not a full-time job, not any of that, just a pet project idea where I would be able to go back to Indonesia twice a year to surf and genuinely help. So I felt like, okay, whatever my next career is going to be, it would be so great to have this genuine platform to help the places that I love and use it as an excuse and a vehicle to be able to just stay connected with that place throughout the years. And so I really was compelled around Indonesia as one of my favorite places. And I'd seen the need with my own eyes. And so, and ultimately chose water because my dad was doing a little work in that space, but more than anything, it just seemed like a solvable problem to a non-expert like me.
Oh yeah.
I wasn't trying to create a cure for cancer. That's very complex.
Yeah.
This was like, okay, I'm not even very schooled in this area, but I can get it. I think I can grasp that. There's technology that exists. It's more of a question of access, not a question of technology.
Yes.
And so had the simple idea of like, okay, we'll provide that access. Myself, my friends, and this little idea called Waves for Water will be this vehicle to be able to bring the solutions that exist to the problem and connect it sort of as a bridge. And I set out on my very first trip for Waves for Water, which was a trip to Indonesia. I bought 10 filters with my own money. And I had plans to go to a little island that I'd been to before. At the end of the trip we were on, teach the locals how to use the filters, call it Waves for Water, call it a day.
Yeah.
And before I was able to get to that village, I was actually caught in a 7.3 earthquake.
Wow.
And it was just, like I said in the beginning, it's a twist of fate in that way. You know, you could look at it two ways. You could say, wow, what a coincidence, or wow, by accident you were there, or maybe it was fully on purpose.
Yes.
It depends on how you look at things and your own connection with spirituality, I guess, and the bigger picture.
I find serendipity to be a very interesting term that I use a lot in speaking about entrepreneurship and opportunities.
I think that's a perfect word. I mean, and so serendipitously, I was there. I ended up having this first responder opportunity because I was right in ground zero, basically, of this city called Padang.
Yeah.
And it just common sense mode kicked in. And I felt like, well, the people here probably need these filters more than the other island that I was going to go to. Mm-hmm. So I just stayed and essentially was the first responder by serendipitously, I guess.
Yeah. Well, so you started solving the problem with a very current and pressing need right there. And then this developed into the organization, would you say?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think whether it was you or anybody we meet on the street or anybody you meet anywhere, if you put them into a situation where they're faced with that level of death and destruction, just regardless if they have tools like I had to help, just being there and experiencing that, there's no way it doesn't impact your life.
Yeah.
There's no way you go through that and come out the other side the same.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you're going to go start an organization, but you would definitely have an imprint. And for me, that coupled with actually having this idea before that and having these tools in my hands to really make a difference. You know, those 10 filters I bought, they were $20 filters each. So it cost me about $100 and they helped thousands of people.
That's amazing.
And it was just, so that just rocked my world. And it's also because it was the crossroads of my life and all of these other things that were a combination, like combining factors, basically, that when I came out of it, lifted my head up from that experience, I was a completely different person. And I was so laser focused and clear. And just, I mean, I said, oh, this isn't a pet project. This is my life. This is my path. This is my calling. I'm going to pursue this full time.
Wow. And speaking of, you spoke about your first career and how that developed, finding a new path, and speaking about the laser focus and problem solving, I would define all of these traits within the category of an entrepreneur. How do you relate to the term entrepreneur?
I really like, I mean, I like the word, but I really like what it means to me, because a lot of times I feel like that word gets really put into the box of business.
Yes.
Which is fine. And it's true and it's accurate. But for me, an entrepreneur just means somebody who likes getting after it.
Yes.
You know, it's like somebody who has ambition.
Yes.
So ambition, somebody who's willing to take risks.
Yes.
I mean, you have to have ambition and take risks if you're going to be an entrepreneur. So period. But I feel like it's more of like an energy than it is just a label.
I can totally agree and relate to that. And I've learned about, so there's always these new terms coming. So impact entrepreneur is something that we're familiar with, which I would also label you as. And systems entrepreneur is a new one where you're trying to change existing systems and structures within society. And I think and hope we can encourage more of that. And it's a tough journey, and having that mission in focus, I want to ask you, what is your biggest challenge today with this organization? So you've grown to a global scale, and what challenges are you facing today in continuing this impact?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you kind of touched on it. It's systems are the biggest challenge. Yeah. So the existing systems, the existing structures are in a lot of cases antiquated.
Yes.
So my organization by design is very unique and very different than a lot of other NGOs out there. For example, we definitely welcome and work with donations. Yeah. But our programs aren't hinged on some fundraising goal we may or may not meet. We're really set up more like contractors. So we provide a service. Like we provide access to clean water on a big scale for a community or for a region, and somebody pays for it. And we are the implementers. We are. So that's sort of the way we work. And that's the way I designed it, because I didn't want to, after living in Haiti for 2 years and seeing a lot of aid projects where they do like a fundraiser, they get half the funding for this big project they want to do, and they'd start work. Yeah. And then they go do their second fundraiser and they wouldn't meet their goal.
Yes.
And the whole project dies on the vine.
Yes.
And I've seen skeleton communities because of that. And so I was like, well, that doesn't make sense. Why don't we just say, hey, this is a supreme need, basically. This is a human right that we're providing. And somebody has interest in this area enough to provide that because A, it's the right thing to do, and probably B, because they have some other agenda as well. Like whether that's a corporation or that's a government or an individual or whatever that just has a connection to that place and says, well, the main infrastructure that's here isn't fulfilling all those needs. It's not up to par. So I'm willing to step in and do this. So we work with the UN, we work with the U.S. military, we work with dockers, we work with corporate partners, other larger NGOs that want to subcontract us out for our program. So that's how I designed the organization. And I guess to go back to your question, we're still categorized as a 501c3 nonprofit organization and global NGO type organization, which is fine. Yeah. But we're kind of changing that model a little bit.
Yes,
and
innovating within that
system. Exactly. Almost like you said, like systems entrepreneur, right? Yeah. And so you can run it whenever you're doing that, you're going to run into some roadblocks because you don't fit in the existing box.
Yes.
And the existing structure. So that's been the biggest challenge, is having to navigate some of the bureaucracy of these antiquated systems.
That's very inspiring in understanding that you can take the main mission of just doing good, and instead of just fitting into the way it's been done historically, just thinking what is the best way to do this, and then going into the fight of trying to pursue that path.
And ultimately create a new model, a new path, a new option. So I'm not saying you have to get rid of the old. I'm just saying let's look at more efficient ways.
Yeah. And if I'm listening to this as an individual, I'm not a big organization, but I want to support. You mentioned that you do take financing from private individuals as well. What is the best way, is my question, I could help? Could I join you, for example?
Absolutely. And so I want to be clear. We don't only operate the way I described before. So that's how we do our big scale stuff. So as a global organization, we want to go out there and take big chunks out of the problem. Yes. Then we'll partner on a big scale with somebody who's got a big budget. And that's how that works.
Yes.
In parallel, sort of side by side, is the more grassroots guerrilla movement of Waves for Water, which is individuals getting involved through our courier program. So the courier program is our version of a volunteer program where we've sort of said, hey, why don't we piggyback travelers that are already going places?
Oh, yeah.
And so we created a crowdfunding platform on the website. There's two ways individuals can get involved. Either you are a very adventurous sort of outgoing person that likes to travel to all types of countries, in some cases still developing countries, and you feel like you could be a good hands-on person in the field, then you would sign up for the courier program, which means you would create a fundraising page. You'd say, hi, I'm John. I'm going to Nicaragua on a surf trip, and these are my dates. This is why I'm going. My filter goal is 5 filters. Then you crowdfund for those filters. Then we train you. The organization trains you and sets you on your way, a very DIY guerrilla approach where we're saying, hey, look, you get to craft your own experience, and we're going to just give you the tools to be able to help along the way. The other is maybe you're not at that point in your life. Maybe you were that type of person, but you're not at that point in your life, and you really got your roots down and you've got a full-time job and you're at home, but you still want to help us as an individual. Yeah. You can go on and create a custom fundraiser to support Waves for Water projects around the world. So you could go through all the list of the Waves for Water projects, like the Amazon project in Ecuador, or the Philippines volcano response we're doing. And you can go through and go, God, that one really resonates. Or I have a good friend who's Filipino, or I just really like that one. But instead of just donating $20 to the organization, you can create your own fundraiser and crowdfund for the Philippines project. So, you get to label it. You then send that out through your social network. It's basic crowdfunding and stuff. So yeah, it's just more customized ways for people to ultimately personalize their contribution and their help.
I think that's brilliant, really tapping into the whole community aspect and me encouraging my close friends to want to contribute. And you're really getting at this bottom up and top down approach. What is your sort of feeling related to the two approaches? Do you think it's either or the combination of both, and which one do you find most effective?
Well, I think from this side of the lens, so from my community, and ultimately, I guess let's just say we're US based, so to our US audience, or our audience that is sort of on this side from the developed world. Yeah. It's really 360, the approach. It's full spectrum. You want to cover top down, side, right? Yes. But from the other side of the lens, for the communities that we work in and the way that we implement our program, we really take a bottom approach up. Yes. So you go in really ground level, under the radar, around the red tape, and you connect with the right local advocates in a community, and you start working, as opposed to, that saying, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. Yes. So it's kind of like, to avoid the bureaucracy, and if let's say you go top down and all of a sudden a local politician who potentially might even be corrupt is now using you're asking for approval to do the work in this certain village or this certain territory, and they see this as a power grab, and they can use it for political gain. I'm not saying that happens every time, but I have seen that. Yes. And so there is a very clear-cut and distinct approach when we're implementing. If we're talking about outreach and community, then I think it's 360. Always. Yeah. And I'm just thinking, like, what could the harm be if you go and do the impact directly, and then they would want to be involved, rather than if you go to them and there is some risk there with not having the same impact. Yeah. I mean, you've essentially given the power to the people. Yes. And when you do that, the authorities have no choice but to get in to get behind it, because it would be political suicide for them not to. And so you've really flipped that script And I think that that's a really, it's not a new approach. I didn't invent that approach, but I think it's incredibly useful and valuable.
And one to promote.
Yeah, absolutely.
And speaking about this journey you've been on, learning on the job, more or less, I would like to understand a little bit about like key learnings from your journey, and maybe frame it in a way where the question is, what would be your key advice to a young future challenger or current challenger?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't never had any real formal training of anything. I mean, at least in the space that I'm in now. Yeah. I had real life, real time training, in very extreme environments. And there's no, I mean, the rule of 10,000 hours is real. So there's no shortcut. If you put in the time, you will become good at something like yes. That's a given. It doesn't matter. Some people are better than others. They have natural talents and, all that kind of stuff. But if you just take all that away as a baseline example, if there's no way around time. So like, if you just put in the time, you will achieve greatness, in my opinion. But on top of that, one of the main things I think that I've used as a barometer for almost all of my decision making, and I still do, is this notion of being crazy.
Oh yeah.
And being crazy is good.
Yeah.
Not crazy like crazy person, but sort of like another word for risk.
Almost over ambitious, over like taking the base level and aiming above. Would you say?
Well, yeah, and I'll give you an example. So like, a lot of times throughout my young adulthood, when I was very testosterone filled and just wanting to charge on all levels, I remember doing things like, I'm going to ride a motorcycle down Baja, and people are like, have you ever even rode a motorcycle? And I said, no, but I'll learn. And they're like, you're crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And so I remember hearing, that's just one example, but I remember hearing that a lot with certain ideas I had.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And you start hearing like, that's crazy. That's crazy. Then all of a sudden you realize that you're able to look back and tie all of your most formative experiences to the ones people said were crazy.
Yes.
So then if you take it a step further and you have a little more awareness around it and a little more maturity, you realize that if you tell somebody about an idea and they don't say that it sounds crazy, then you got to go back to the drawing board.
Yes. I can relate to that a lot. Yes.
My advice would be to stay crazy, stay in that frequency, stay in that bold frequency where people are looking at you going, like shaking their head. Then you're on the right track.
Yes. That's very good advice. And I think we can create a lot of driven and aspirational individuals from quotes like that. Yeah,
absolutely.
Jon, thank you very much for this conversation. It was great learning about your journey and your mission, and I'm looking forward to following your journey moving forward.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it was great.